All right, let's talk about a revolution. But not just any revolution. This is one that didn't just change history. It completely redrew our map of the universe and, our place in it.
So, what does it take to change reality itself? I mean, that's a huge question, right? And the answer, well, it's probably not what you're thinking. See, this wasn't a revolution fought with armies or weapons. Nope. This one was waged entirely in the mind. The weapons here, they were telescopes, mathematics, and a totally new way of looking at the world. This is the story of the scientific revolution.
Okay, so before we jump into all the history, we kind of need to get on the same page. What even is a scientific revolution? And to do that, we got to turn to a philosopher named Thomas Kuhn. He's really our best guide here.
So Kuhn had this brilliant idea. He said science doesn't just, calmly add new facts to a big pile. No way. Instead, it goes through these really dramatic cycles. Most of the time, scientists are in what he called normal science. Everyone basically agrees on the rules, and they're just solving puzzles within that system. But then, anomalies start popping up, results that just don't fit the model. And when enough of those pile up, the whole field enters a crisis. People start losing faith. That's when a brand new framework has to emerge. And that, my friends, is the revolution.
And this framework he's talking about, he called it a paradigm. And it is, well, it's everything. It's like the intellectual operating system for science at any given time. It dictates what questions are even worth asking, what tools you can use, and even what counts as a legitimate answer.
And we're not talking about a minor update here. A paradigm shift isn't like going from version 1.0 to 1.1. Kuhn saw it as a complete, total break. He even compared it to a political revolution, where one entire way of life gets thrown out and replaced by something completely new. You're basically choosing between two incompatible worlds.
Okay, so to really see this idea in action, let's look at the ultimate case study. I mean, the big one. For more than 1,000 years, an entire civilization operated under one single, massive paradigm. The idea that the Earth was the center of everything, the geocentric universe. This was called the Ptolemaic system. And it was elegant, in its own way. It put a motionless Earth right at the center of the universe, the heart of creation. But here's the catch. To make what people actually saw in the sky fit this model, it got unbelievably complicated. They had to keep adding all these fixes, these patches, things like planets moving in little mini circles on top of their main orbits. It was this brilliant, but super clunky and messy piece of machinery. So, by the 1500s, this whole complicated system was starting to groan under its own weight. It was becoming a real problem. Those anomalies that Kuhn talked about, they were piling up. You could almost hear the machine creaking. And right then, in the middle of this crisis, a Polish astronomer, Nicolaus Copernicus, comes along with a dangerously simple idea.
And you know what? The real power of his idea was just how simple it was. In his 1543 book, Copernicus just puts the sun in the middle, and suddenly all that weird backward motion of planets like Mars, what astronomers call retrograde motion, it wasn't some deep mystery anymore. It wasn't something that needed all these extra complicated gears. It was just an illusion. It's what happens when a faster-moving Earth laps a slower-moving outer planet in its orbit. So simple.
But you have to understand, this was way more than just rearranging the furniture of the solar system. Goethe put it perfectly. This was a psychological earthquake. Imagine being told that everything you thought about your place in the universe was wrong. Humanity was literally being kicked off its throne at the center of creation.
But look, an idea, no matter how beautiful or simple, is still just an idea. For it to become a real revolution, to actually flip that paradigm on its head, it needed one thing: proof. And boy, did that proof arrive. Over the next 150 years or so, it came in this incredible chain reaction. One discovery led to the next. You had Johannes Kepler, who figured out that planets moved in nice, clean ellipses, not the messy circles everyone assumed. Then Galileo Galilei points his brand new telescope up at the sky and gets actual visual evidence. And finally, the legend himself, Isaac Newton, comes along and delivers the knockout punch, the actual physics that explain the whole shebang.
I mean, Galileo's observations were just devastating to the old way of thinking. He saw moons circling Jupiter. That alone proved not everything revolved around the Earth. Game over, right? Then he sees the phases of Venus, which was impossible unless Venus was orbiting the sun. He even came up with the idea of inertia, which finally answered that old nagging question. Hey, if the Earth is moving so fast, why don't we all just fly off?
So Kepler and Galileo did an amazing job describing how this new system worked, but there was still this huge glaring question mark hanging over everything. Why? What was the invisible glue holding it all together? What was the force behind this incredible cosmic dance?
And the answer, of course, came from Isaac Newton, and it was just breathtaking. With one single, elegant law, he tied the heavens and the earth together. He realized that the very same force that pulls an apple from a tree to the ground is the exact same force that holds the moon in orbit around us and us in orbit around the sun. It was gravity. And with that, the new paradigm wasn't just an idea anymore. It was reality.
Okay, but here's where it gets even bigger. This revolution, it wasn't just about swapping out old facts for new ones. It was about something much more fundamental. It was about changing the very method we use to find truth. A whole new way of thinking was born.
And philosophers were right there, laying the groundwork. You had Francis Bacon on one side, who was all about the inductive method. Basically, start with what you can see and measure, do experiments, and build your theories up from the evidence. Then you had René Descartes on the other side, pushing for the deductive method. He said, let's start with things we absolutely cannot doubt. You know, his famous, I think, therefore I am. And then use pure logic to figure everything else out.
And once these powerful new tools of reason were out of the box, you couldn't put them back in. They didn't just stay in astronomy. Thinkers like Baruch Spinoza grabbed onto Descartes' radical doubt and just ran with it. He started applying it to the biggest questions of all, about God, about purpose. He ended up arguing for a universe that wasn't run by some grand divine plan, but by the cold, impartial cause and effect of natural laws.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What's the legacy of all this? I mean, why should a revolution that happened 400 years ago matter to you and me right here, right now? Because it taught us something absolutely profound about knowledge itself. It showed us that science isn't some dusty old textbook filled with facts that are set in stone. No, it's a living, breathing thing. It's this powerful, ongoing process of questioning everything, challenging authority, and being willing to throw out old ideas, even cherished ones, for better ones.
And that brings us to maybe the most humbling lesson of all. Just look at this number, 0. That is the number of guarantees, absolute ironclad guarantees that any of today's scientific truths will last forever. Think about that. Every single great idea we hold right now is potentially temporary. Because this process, it never stops. And that leaves us with one last kind of unsettling thought. A system of belief, a whole way of seeing reality, lasted for millennia. And it was completely overturned by a new way of looking at things. So it really makes you wonder, what accepted truths of our own time, the things we think are so obviously correct, are just waiting for their own Copernicus to come along?